The Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return.
Hello, I'm Joni Siegel, the host of the Addiction Podcast. In 2022, over 100,000 people died from drug and alcohol abuse, and that number is growing daily. Fentanyl poisoning, pot, cocaine, heroin, and even psychedelics and alcohol all contribute to this crisis, while we're bombarded with promotions from thousands of rehabs. Newborns are born addicted, and the majority of homeless people struggle with drug addiction. Drug dealers exploit online resources to sell to teens, and antidepressant use is spiraling out of control. This podcast features brutally honest guest interviews revealing harsh realities and offering hope and solutions through their stories. We don't sugarcoat anything. Guests speak raw and real. More importantly, you'll find inspiration to understand, overcome, and achieve recovery, whether for yourself or to help others, some within your own family, many among your friends or associates. Whether you're seeking help or just a glimmer of hope, our podcast equips you with the latest insights to confront this generational battle. Many listeners tell us they want to join the fight, but do not have the time or money to act, lobby, or just help. If that's you, go to www.patreon.com/theaddictionpodcast and see how you can help. Debbie Simon, thank you so much for being with us today, and Theresa Clower, you as well. Debbie, tell us a little bit of this. We're going to obviously talk about Into Light Project because that's kind of the whole subject of today's podcast. But Debbie, you and your family have a very special experience with Into Light. So would you share that with us, please?
Sure. So our son Scott suffered from addiction for probably 10 years and before his passing. And I was attending one of my grief support group meetings, and one of the affiliates there, she mentioned, sent me the information about the Into Light Project. And so it was the Florida project. We live in Florida, and our son was born down here. So I looked at, I thought about it, and I said, that sounds like something really awesome. It was going to be in Orlando. And I went home that evening, and I told my husband about it, and he was very enthusiastic about it, which I was really sort of surprised. I thought that maybe he wouldn't want to do it because he really struggled with Scott's addiction. He had a very hard time with understanding it, I guess is the word, and dealing with it.
Hi, my name is Amy Newman, and my husband Bobby and I have a business called Newman Intervention Services. We provide intervention services for families who have loved ones struggling with drug addiction. Our goal is to help individuals get the support and treatment they need to overcome addiction and start on the path to recovery. With our personalized and compassionate approach, we guide families through the challenging process of getting their loved one into rehab and onto a road of a healthier future. Together, we can make a positive difference in the lives of those affected by drugs. If you or someone you know is in need of an intervention, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Let's work together and bring hope and healing to those battling addiction.
Call 866-989-4499 today and say the word podcast to get a 10% discount. Or go to newmaninterventions.com and type in the word podcast for a 10% discount. This service comes with a free 1-hour consultation with Bobby.
He didn't go to the support group meetings as I did, really didn't talk about it a lot to his friends either, nor his family. I mean, I was the only one that he really talked about it with, and we have another son and discussed it with him, but for the most part, kept it very much to himself. And so his reaction was very positive. And so that we proceeded to sign up for it. And as we were, preparing for the whole thing, he was really getting involved in it. The narrative that we wrote about our son, he had, a lot to say about that. And so then the day came that we went up there, and it happened to be our wedding anniversary, the opening ceremony, the opening night. And I have to say, from the moment that he walked into the exhibit, he was just of course, overcome with emotion, as all the parents were and loved ones. But I was just so, he stood there in front of our son's portrait for the longest time and just really absorbed it in. And I could just see that he felt a lot of pride. That's the way I would say it. It was sad for him, but he was just so proud to see our son up there and be part of that exhibit. And then the narrative that was written for him, and as well as all the other individuals that were in the exhibit. He kind of went off on his own, and I let him do that. And he just took a lot of time to look at each one of the portraits, and really, it was just a very transforming experience for him. It was for me as well, but really for my husband. I was just so happy that he went. And actually that evening we went out to dinner in Orlando, and our waiter asked us, why are you in Orlando? What brings you here? And he just unloaded to him and said, well, our son suffered from addiction. Unfortunately he passed from the disease, and we went to this project that's being held here in Orlando, and it's just been such an amazing experience. And I was just shocked, because this was a big step for him to talk about it, and especially to a stranger.
Yeah.
So
thank you, Debbie. I understand where your husband is coming from. And, we have talked to so many people on the podcast, and, it's hard, I think, oftentimes for parents to really get a grasp on addiction. And, there can sometimes be, there can always be guilt, like, what did I do wrong? Is it my fault? But there can also be kind of, if you have not been addicted to drugs or alcohol, you don't understand that it's not just something you can stop. It's not just mentally and spiritually addictive. It's physically addictive. And the cravings are, now I'm not speaking from personal experience. I'm speaking from having talked to addicts. But I just think a lot of people don't understand why the addict can't just stop it. And they can't in many, many cases. We've been doing this for 7 years, and the number of people who, could just get clean and sober without any sort of treatment program, they're like few and far between. I mean, really. And I get that, anyway, I kind of digress. Theresa Clower, founder of Into Light Project. Why did you do this? How did you get into this? This is such a brilliant idea in my viewpoint, but how'd you think of it?
Well, it started in tragedy, like so many things with parents. My son, Devin, died in 2018 after about a 10-year struggle with addiction. And at that time, I was trying to process that grief. And I did a simple act. I picked up a pencil. And mind you, I had never drawn a portrait in my life. So this was like such a miracle to me that I could actually get something that looked like Devin. And I worked on that portrait, Joni, for 3 days. And I was visiting with Devin. It was shortly after his death. I was visiting with him. Every little nuance of his face I was with. And then I instinctively put that portrait away when there was nothing more to do.
You are listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. For more information on the podcast, or to reach out if you have a story you would like to share with us, go to our Facebook page by the same name, or you can email us at theaddictionpodcast@yahoo.com, or go to our website, theaddictionpodcast.com. And please remember to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and give us a 5-star review. We appreciate you listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. We don't do this podcast because we are former addicts. We don't do this podcast because we have loved ones who have suffered from addiction. We do this podcast because we feel that addiction is one of the biggest problems facing the world today, and that no matter who you are, no matter your religion,
no matter your income status, no matter your race, no matter anything about you, addiction affects you. This podcast is a free resource for anybody looking for help with it.
And I knew the last step was going to be a really tough one. So I pulled it out 3 days later and I set it on the table and I looked at Deb and I signed my name. And that was my goodbye to Devin. It was like the floodgates opened. And I had to keep drawing. I could not stop drawing faces. And because of that, I was drawing strangers. I was drawing people in magazines. And I thought, well, this is sort of dumb. Why not use this skill set that I've just discovered to see how it might help others, and like Devin. So I cold called families. Devin died in Baltimore. We were living in Delaware at the time, and I just simply cold called people I found in the support system, people who had obituaries of young people in Baltimore. And I was able to get 40 submissions, people who were willing to share their loved ones' images and their narratives. And that was how it started. And I had absolutely no intention of a national organization at that time. I simply needed a way of recognizing my own son's death and then others like Dev. And it took on its own life. And we're now working on our 15th state with a goal of one unique exhibition in every state. So every state has 40. The 41st is always Devin. He's like, where is that little character that travels all over the country, whatever, Margot or whatever it is. Anyway, where is he now? He's in Oklahoma or Alabama. Devin's traveling a lot. But the other 40 are people from that state. And so it's a very community-driven project. We feel strongly about community. And that's where it is. That's how it started. I consider it a gift from Devin. I really do. As I said, I've never done portrait work. I did have a fine arts background, but I had never done portrait work. So
I have to tell you, I find that very hard to believe as I look at the portraits behind you. Are either one of those Devin or no?
Devin is right here.
Okay. Yeah, I find it very hard to believe that you've never done a portrait before. I'm a watercolor artist, wouldn't touch a portrait with a 10-foot pole. So I think, yeah, but that's absolutely amazing. And, we very early on in the podcast, we had a gentleman on who had been a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under the president, and his son had died of an overdose. And he said, my wife and I sat down and said, we can either give in to the grief and close ourselves off and, go to a very dark place, or we can use what we know and the people that we know and do something about it. And so they started a charity. And similar to you, Theresa, and you as well, Debbie, you take that grief and channel it into something that's positive. And I cannot, first of all, sorry, I'm a mom. I can't even begin to fully understand what you ladies have gone through. But the fact that you take the grief and turn it into something positive, it's so, I can't applaud you ladies enough for doing that, because I think so often the tendency is really to shut it off, not tell anybody, not share it. And when you share it, when you share your story, when you share Devin's story, when you share Scott's story, even when you just share your grief, people can relate to it, because there are so many people who have gone through it. And that's huge. I need to quit talking. This is about you guys and not me, but it's huge.
Yeah. Well, and we really see all of our families like Debbie and, hundreds and hundreds and almost thousands of families around the country now. They're so much a part of this project, because without their willingness to share their story, to share their loved ones, then we have nothing. So it is truly, honestly, a community-driven national project that, and I agree with you, Joni, that you have to, at least for me, I needed a place to move forward. And I, people do get stuck in grief. And for me, I needed to move on into hope. And that hope brings me an opportunity to see the light at the end of all of this. So I feel like it's truly a blessing. And I don't say that word very lightly, that there is a way that I've discovered for me, and hopefully others that have become part of this project, to move from grief into the mourning phase. And the mourning phase will always be with us, always. You don't lose a loved one and not go and sit there every day. But that, like I said, that mourning provides me with a time to hope. It's breaking loose.
And I think what's even bigger than that, if I could evaluate for you, which I shouldn't, is that you're giving hope to other people. Like, it's hope for you, but it's hope for Debbie, and it's hope for Debbie's husband, and it's hope for all of the other families whose loved ones you have put into these exhibits. Do you do all the art yourself, Theresa?
I did for the first 5 or 6 states. I did,
Okay.
but we have it's grown so much that we now have a team of national artists and writers.
Okay.
And that's how I'm out. So I am keeping my fingers in it, but I certainly can't do all 40.
Well, I understand that. That makes absolutely total sense. It came out of nowhere. Like, are you doing them all? But the thing that I think maybe a lot of people don't understand, there may be some of our audience who go, I don't get it. Why a drawing of my loved one? What is that going to do? Aesthetics, whether it's in the form of music or art or writing, can change people. It can absolutely change people. And we've had other people on the podcast who are in recovery, and they use music, and they teach Rock to Recovery. They teach veterans who have been addicted to drugs, and they teach other people in recovery how to write a song. And you're doing aesthetics in a different way. And I think it's absolutely huge. Theresa, do you have specific states that you are going after now? And can people find those states if they go to the website and know how to reach out to you?
Yes. Well, we have opened submissions now in Iowa. We just actually closed Oklahoma today, but Iowa, New Hampshire, Utah will be opening up next year. And, so there are still a lot of states open, but those are some that are actively looking. We're looking for submissions in those states. And yes, they can go to a website. But, one more thing I'd like to just add to, and Debbie, you could certainly chime in here. The artwork does have a power unlike anything else, even more so than a photograph, because photographs are ubiquitous today. We see thousands every day, but original artwork, we don't see that. That's one thing. The other thing that I've heard from so many of our families is the legacy factor. That this project, the ultimate goal is one huge exhibition of all 40 portraits. So we'll have over 2,000 portraits and narratives in a national exhibition, kind of in the spirit of the AIDS quilt. And what that is doing is giving so many of our families an opportunity for their loved one's life to be not only remembered, but to have value in that it is a testimony to this period in our nation's health. We're facing the worst health epidemic with this drug addiction that the country's ever faced. So Scott and Devin and all the others will have a place at the table there. Their lives are going to matter long term. And I find that legacy factor really, really important for families. No one wants to have their loved one forgotten.
Exactly.
Um,
Debbie, what did it mean to you? There
I
you
was
go.
gonna say, if I could, geez, the portrait for me, I talk to it every day. I'm gonna get emotional, but
It's okay.
I have my coffee. I always say good morning, and I have to say, when I first came back home with it, I moved it around a few times in the house. And, I had it in one place and I thought, okay, I love it there. But then finally I said one day, this is where it has to go. And my husband agreed, my son agreed, all my other family that's come over has. And Theresa did such an amazing job of capturing Scott's essence in that portrait. I just, and as she said, something about a portrait versus a photograph. It's so personal, and I feel like he's sitting there in the room with me. I really do. And the other thing is too, it's so important that the people that go to these exhibits, they see that there's these individuals are so much more than a disease. They all had beautiful lives. They all were accomplished. There were many athletes. My son had a wonderful life, and unfortunately went away to college and made some bad decisions. And, that's when it happened. But there's so much more to his soul and his life than just that. And that's the thing, he was so embarrassed by having that disease. And I know that. And he told me that. So I feel that he's so proud and he's just smiling down knowing that, especially when he was in that room in that exhibit, it's just giving him such a joy. I just know that. And even when he was in recovery and in treatment and such, he was always the one to try to get people to stay, when they wanted to leave. And they all told me that after he passed. And so this is like a continuation of what he was doing when he was here. And so it just means so much to me that, I have that portrait and that, we had him in the exhibit, and I know it does to him. And I also felt too, walking around that exhibit, I just felt that all of those souls brought us together. They were all there for a reason, and it was very powerful, very, very powerful.
Absolutely. Theresa, you only do 40 in each state. You're probably going to have to do a whole other round. I'm sorry. I'm really putting you on the spot.
I'm almost 74 years old. I would love to think I'll be able to do another round, but I doubt it.
Oh, I don't know. I'm 73, Theresa. I don't have a whole lot of sympathy, but
yeah,
there are so many people that are affected by this. I call it a pandemic because COVID got so much airplay, and the whole addiction situation in this country has never quite had that airplay, which is a topic for a whole other podcast, which we won't get into. So if people wanted to reach out, even if maybe their state isn't mentioned, you didn't mention it today, how do they do that?
Well, actually, if they're interested, we are always looking for ambassadors. We work with a little system we set up. So ambassadors represent the state and help us maneuver venues, help us to find the funding. So there is a place on our website where you can contact us if you're interested in seeing an exhibit and in helping in your state in some way. And that's all on our website. So, and the other thing I need to mention is this exhibit costs us $50,000 every single state. And I'm not going to sit here and drive home the fundraising end of it, but I will say it's challenging. And so, all of that, if there's a potential listener who wants to support this, that would be amazing. We are working with a lot of government agencies. I mean, there's so much to this project that I haven't even mentioned. One thing I do want to talk about, though, real quickly, is the button campaign. And I brought Devin's here. This is the button. And then on the back is a QR code. everyone that goes to one of our exhibits is encouraged to wear a button of someone. They may not even know them. Learn their story and walk with that button on. It's our walking exhibit. And boy, does that open up conversation. And that's what this is all about. It is honoring the people, but this exhibit is about changing conversation and about erasing stigma.
Yep.
So, yeah, anyone who's interested, they can go to our website just for more information or to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from them.
And the website is intolightproject.org.
Correct. Yeah.
Got it. Debbie, any last words for us today?
No, other than I just can't express enough how proud my husband and I, and my family, that Scott was chosen to be in this exhibit and in part of this project, because, as you said, it's gotten, this was 6 years ago, and it's just amazing how it's, like you say, it's just become an epidemic. And it's so important that we do raise awareness, because so many individuals don't get the help that they need. We supported our son, and we were able to send him to get help, but so many don't. And that's what I really hope that this will do. And I couldn't be more proud to be part of it. And can't thank Theresa enough for the gift she's given us as a family.
That's awesome. Debbie, thank you for sharing your story and Scott's story today, and your husband's story. Hope he's not embarrassed. We didn't say his name, so we don't have to say his name in case he's embarrassed. And Theresa, I can't thank you enough for what you're doing. It's a unique project. For listeners, if you're listening, the project needs support. And you can go to intolightproject.org and you can support the project, you can donate, and you can reach out and become an ambassador, and you can help. Thank you, Theresa.
Thank you, Joni. It's been wonderful having this time with you. And thank you for the hard work that you and Steve are doing every day with your podcasts and the messaging you're doing. It's very important.
Thank you so much. And keep us posted on exhibits as they come up. I don't think you have our email, but your lovely lady who set this up does. But I would really like to, and maybe I just go to the website, but I would like to know about exhibits coming up. We are in Florida, and you've already had that one. But if there are ones that are close to us, and definitely when the national one happens, I would love to know about that. Can't promise I'll come, but I would seriously consider it, because I think the project is so valuable. And you're doing what we try and do with the podcast, which is just giving people hope.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, well, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Debbie.
Thank you so much.
Debbie. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Such a brilliant project, I think, to use these portraits to raise awareness, to help erase the stigma. And the Into Light project is just something that I think is just a really great organization, a great project. If you can help, if you're in a state that's going to have an exhibit and you can help them with that, please do that. There's all kinds of ways that nonprofits need help. And sometimes it's straight donations. Sometimes it's being an ambassador. Sometimes it's just volunteering. But if you can help, reach out, and we'll be back again with another interview next week.
You have been listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. For more information, reach out to us on Facebook or go to www.theaddictionpodcast.com. Our email is theaddictionpodcast@yahoo.com.